and I will tell you just where you please cannot do the filming or the drones. Where no filming, you see these excavations down there to the right hand side, because they have found some graves. So practically this side behind the church and to the right. Please don't do the filming or the drones there. We go to the left side. First we'll visit this church and I will start showing it to you from here, and then we go to the frontal part, and then we go to the place in front, and finally we visit the second church. I hope this is okay.
Is it only a church or a monastery as well?
It is a monastery. It is actually this is a monastery, a male monastery, but it's also the mausoleum of Stefan Nemanja, but monastery, the mausoleum church of him, not as a ruler but as a monk. Okay, thanks. So filming and drones, please do not do it there, because they have found some graves and because of respect.
Can we take a look at least?
You can take a look later, please. You know why? Because I want to show you first the churches, and then after that I leave you free time, like usual. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right. So let's come here first.
Were the graves unknown to them, or why did they
they're doing excavations and they didn't know what they would find. The first one, this one, was constructed. The construction was ended 2 years before the end of the 12th century. And then in the end of the 13th century, the frescoes were finished. What is so interesting and so unique about this church, if you remember, when we were visiting Topola, I was telling you that we had 2 local schools in architecture, which means we have 2 schools which use the Byzantine architecture, but with some other details. And you remember the Rosetta as a typical ornament of Moravska school along the river Morava. Here, this is an example of Raška school, so local, we say autochthon school. What is so unique here? You see, when Stefan Nemanja wanted to construct this church as his future mausoleum, he had to bring the hand workers, and the hand workers came from the Adriatic coast. So they were experienced back then into the architecture of Romanica. So what do you have here? You can see outside it resembles more like Romanica, but you can see here this medium cupola, which is typical for Byzantine architecture, or a little bit ahead of this, we will go around and you see that, you can see the basilica as well. You will see these typical biphoras, and each biphora has different ornaments. So when you're doing the photos and the filming by drone, you will see that each biphora has different ornaments. And here, this biphora, on the corner, to the left and to the right, you have two people. One is the woodwork and another one is the symbol. Very interesting one. Local. Now, go this way. No, come out. to the right and to the left. This is a very interesting fresco over here. So I'll first show you the most important points and then you can do the filming, whatever you need, just to know what are the highlights. Alright, so here you can see they're bringing back here the body of Stephen Nemanja. So he was a monk in the monastery Hilandar, today this is in Greece, and when he died, his body was brought here. So the bringing of his body was shown on his fresco, and to the right hand side you can see this church dedicated to the Virgin. You can see the face of Saint Sava, you can see the church people, and you can see the locals, so the people as well, who are waiting for the body of Stephen Nemanja. Were normally in the rest of the monastery finished in the end of the 13th century. Because the usual thing is that you finish a monastery in 20 to 30, sometimes 40 years you finish the frescoes, but the frescoes were finished here in the end of the 13th century, but you will see something else, what happened to the frescoes here. So this is a holy meal where the body of the Christ is like a food, and Christ is shown here as a bowl. So if you look, this should be considered as the first part of the church, because this is called pripravka, and it was added later. So the original church, which was made in the end of the 12th century, had the beginning from here. Here is something shown, like a Last Supper or the Secret Supper, and you can see here knives and forks. This shows us that Nemanjić dynasty, if you remember from Topolo, were using knives and forks while the rest of the Europe wasn't. Of course, these knives and forks and everything was made of gold. And they know exactly what did the members of the dynasty eat, how did their cuisine look like, how did they live like. The ruler had the right, whatever ornaments you can see on the church, you could see on the clothes, or you can see on the ring. Bringing a woman, she is dressed in white. This woman who is dressed in white, actually, is a good woman. She didn't have any sins during her life, so that the angel is helping her to come to the body of the Christ and to collect blood. You can see she's carrying a bowl. On the other side, so if you look to the right from the Christ's body, you can see the angel is taking away one woman, and if you look at her clothes, you can see that her clothes are dark, basically. What does it mean? This woman was a sinner, so the angel is taking her away from this sin, from this crucifixion, and she is not allowed to take the blood of Christ. Also, another thing to the left, where you can see the good woman, you can see the sun. To the right, you can see the moon. What is the point? The moon represents the Old Testament. It doesn't have its own light, but it should get the light from the sun. And New Testament is symbolized by the sun, which means the sun, the New Testament has its own sun. It is enlightened by its nature.